Hello, everyone, and I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I'm not a professional speaker by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a lot of knowledge in the hardscape industry, and hopefully I can share some of that with you tonight. I do think we need to, I think we have to just take a moment of silence for our Western Carolina families. I'll give you a little oversight of what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of start where walkways and pavers started. I'm going to kind of work my way down this list and go over what each one of these do. We'll talk a little bit about which could be used as patios or walls, fascia. We've got some fancier stuff that we can look at. This is one of these here. We'll talk in a minute. Is travertine. Some of you may not have ever heard of it, but it comes from Italy or Turkey. And we've got some natural stones here we'll talk about, and then over here is retaining wall stuff.
Yes, they're having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay. Can we move this up a little bit or? Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3 4.
I think that. Just like trees.
Okay. So I've lived here all my life. I was raised on the edge of Matthews and Charlotte. Bought some land out in the Waxhaw area near King Creek Park in 1989. Built a house in 1996 and kind of created a hobby farm. I'm also a beekeeper. I do dabble a little bit with shiitake mushrooms. I have a vegetable garden and got pygmy goats. And I've done a lot of rescues with animals and just having a good time out there. It's just a great area. I'm very happy to be here. The next thing I want to talk about is Carolina Brick and Materials. That's where I work. I've been there for 16 years. Eric McComb is the owner. And it's kind of a funny story how he started his yard. He was a contractor in Charlotte. And he's a great man. I love him to death. He's good to his employees. He has about 150 employees. But he's impatient. And he was trying to get brick on some of his jobs for his houses, and he couldn't get them. So he says, well, and this is out of his mouth, I'll just buy my own trucks and haul the brick myself. And that's kind of how Carolina Brick got started. And about 2009, because it was just Carolina Brick, it was strictly masonry, just brick. 2009, he hired me, and if you think about that time frame, this area was dead. And for him to have the guts to hire me at that time, because nobody was getting hired, it was on December 1st of 2009. And that's when we started the hardscape part of it. And that was going a little bit, but brick had just completely died. That's kind of how Carolina Brick got started. Now we also have Carolina Ready Mix, which that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. He also has some real estate businesses, but he has about 150 employees, and he's a good man. So let's talk about some materials. So if you wanted, for example, if you're a gardener and you just wanted to maybe do something in your greenhouse for drainage and keep the mud down, a lot of you probably already know what this is. 78mm gravel. It's a 3/8 inch clean stone. Works good in the greenhouse. If you have raised beds, for example, which a lot of people nowadays do when they're gardening, you could put these down in between. If you wanted to use landscape fabric below that, you could. I'm not a super big fan of landscape fabric, but this is a good product for that. Excuse me. It's called 78M. Most of the stone that they sell doesn't have a letter behind it. I don't know why this particular one does, but it's really pretty much the second smallest rock you can get at the quarries. And it's about the size of the end of your pinky there, about 3/8 inch. It's got a lot of good uses. If you've ever been to Europe or even Charleston, if you want to go somewhere close, you might see some of these cobbles in the road. This was really the first way they did roadways in a lot of different places. And a lot of it's still there. And why? It's just extremely durable. And it can move a little bit. It doesn't hurt it. But what happens to concrete when it moves? It cracks, right? Asphalt that gets really hot, a heavy load on it, what happens to it? It kind of settles. It has to be repaired. So these cobbles were one of the first things that were used. They still look good. They're very popular, but honestly, I don't sell them much for roadways or patio pavers anymore. It's used for edging. You wanted to edge an area, maybe you want to put plants in there or mulch, whatever you want to do with it. The tan one comes from Tennessee, and it's on this side of Knoxville is the area where it's harvested from. This one here is Pennsylvania, and it comes from Pennsylvania near the New York area. And they're both around $5 a piece. So they're a little bit pricey, but they give you kind of that old world natural look. They're heavy enough where they're going to stay in place. So they're pretty popular. We sell a lot of them. Now, before all this concrete stuff came along, which was probably the early 90s, the only kind of paver you could really get is a brick paver. This is a pine haul brick, and this would be called a flashed brick. Flashed means it's got some black in it. If it was just a red paver, it would just be solid red. So this is pretty much how you initially did paver patios with this brick. There's still some people that use them today. The problem with it is there's just not a lot of color choices with it. You can get red, you can get the flash like we talked about, and you may get a cocoa color, and sometimes you'll have some that are a little bit of a gray color. But the problem with it is just very limited on color choice and sizes really too. This is a 4x8, and that's really the only size you can get it in. Now, it can vary a little bit. This is a 4x8. That means that you're probably going to put, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, polymeric sand, which is sand with some polymer minutes in a sealed bag, and you put it in the cracks between these pavers, and then you wet it, and then it gets hard. But it's has a little bit of elasticity to it. The other way is it's not actually a 4x8. It's like 3 7/8 by 7 7/8. And the reason the paver is a little bit smaller is you concrete it in. It's more permanent. But if you've ever been around an old patio with this, you're going to see some cracks in the concrete. I don't care how good the concrete is. And we have ready mix plants. I'm not bad mouthing that industry because we have 4 plants. Concrete is going to crack at some point. I've got a pool customer, and in their contract, they say, we do guarantee the concrete to break. That's in their contract. Not that it's not going to break, but we guarantee you that the concrete will break. True story. Okay, so we're going to get into the concrete pavers now. This is mimicking this because when these concrete pavers first came out, people thought they were crazy. Everybody, this is all they ever knew, and this is what they wanted. When these came out, they said you're crazy. But the thing about this is you can make lots of different sizes. You can do whatever color you want. There's different thicknesses in it. This is a 4x8 kind of mimicking this. This color is called Earth Blend. It's been a very popular color for many, many years. I'd say 15 plus years. And it's 8,000 PSI. So, I mean, you can drive across this with a tractor trailer and it's not going to break if the base is good, and we'll talk about that. This here is one of the more popular pavers we sell now. This is called City Stone, and it's made by Keystone, which there is a plant in Charlotte. There's actually, because I had so much stuff here I couldn't get it all in, but there's another piece that's actually these 2 pieces put together as one, and it'd be about like this. So it's a 3-piece. And that's what's really been popular in the industry for probably the last 5 years. A 3-piece that's a random pattern in different sizes. That's what's been popular for a long time. This is one of their newer colors. It's called graphite, and I think everybody here knows gray has been kind of the new neutral for, it's probably been 5 or 6 years. The browns are starting slowly to come back, but the gray colors are still strong. But a 3-piece random is very, very popular now. Let's see, you're probably going to be 60 cents here, probably about the same here. This is going to be in the range of 480 a square foot because it's multiple sizes. You have to do it by the square foot, where I can tell you a piece on this. This one, these here, this is called the Plaza series. This is a Keystone product too. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the paver industry. It's a 6x9 and a 6x6. These pieces are used together, but they're not on the same pallet. And there's one particular pattern that most people use, not everybody, but most people. It's called a K pattern, and it would be 70% of this and 30% of that. So if somebody comes in, it's not a big deal that they're on separate pallets. I just have to calculate 70% of this and 30% of this. And you could do these separate if you wanted to. Most people don't, but you could. An example of both of these being separate is in my barn. Is a good example. This to me looks kind of like a cobble. If you turn it upside down flat, it kind of looks like a cobble, but it is man-made. And I just did the whole barn with that because you see a good bit of cobbles in barns, and it looks good. You just got to make sure your lines are straight. That's the problem when you use one size. If you're doing a linear pattern, is your lines will tell on you, and then it looks like crap. You got to be able to see those lines. It's got to be a straight line. Now this here, you could use it by itself, and you could do a linear pattern. You could do a sideways pattern. I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. But if you use these two together, it's going to be a K pattern. And what that is, I can tell you pretty easy what it is. It'll be 4 rectangles like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. See? And then a square here. That's the pattern. And it's called, some people call it mustard K, some people call it K pattern, but this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the industry. It's been around forever. It's still very popular. Go ahead. No, except for when you get to your outer points where you finish it, your finished cuts you would. But what you do is you just build it, and you'd have some hanging over. You ever seen somebody do a wood roof and they just let the boards kind of flop over till they get to the end and they just make one final cut? That's what you do here. When you get to your end point, you just overbuild it a little bit and then just make one cut. And then, of course, on any of this that you use, you have to edge it somehow. That could be if there's a wall there, if your house is there, you don't need anything. It's not going anywhere. But if you're building this, say, out in the middle of a yard, then you'd have to edge it with something. And the professional way to do it is with a plastic edging. And it's kind of shaped like that. It's got holes in it. And you put a 10-inch spike in it, and you put it up against the paver like this. But it's down below the paver. And you really don't even notice it after it's built. And then you just put grass or mulch or whatever you want to put up against it. The way that's not so good, that unfortunately a lot of contractors do, is they just take Saccrete and they just mud it like this around the edges. But I can tell you that it's going to crack, and it's going to probably crack soon. You may get a couple of years out of it, but it's going to start cracking here and there, and then over time it's just going to pull away. And then what happens? Your base of your pavers is going to start to come out. Pavers are going to start to settle, and you'll have a mess. It's plain and simple. And here's another paver. This is called Villaggio. This is a Teco block product. Does anybody know what kind of paver that is by any chance? Let's kind of look at it. It's not perfectly square. It's close. But what I'm going to give you some hints, because it's a tough question if you're not in the industry. But you notice that it's got bigger pieces where when you're putting them together, see on these are very, very small. On this one, they're very large. Well, why is that? Does anybody know? This is a paver still. Yes, ma'am. But it's a certain kind of paver. What it is, I'll answer that question for you. It's a permeable paver. And what that means is there's a wider gap between it, and you put stone. I told you this was the second from the bottom. Well, the bottom stone is called 89 stone, and that's what you put into the cracks. Therefore, it being a permeable paver, that means the water needs to be able to pass down through it. Now, in most of the communities around here, Monroe, a lot of Charlotte, there's no need to use that, but there are communities now that are starting to require it. But you have to do your driveway out of it. You have to do your patio out of it. They only let you have so much area that's non-pervious. If you go up to Lake Norman, you about have to use it. When you get up around the lakes, Lake Wiley, you get down to the beach, it's big. They make you do it. You don't have a choice. It's a good product. It's just really hadn't taken off everywhere, but I think it's a good thing. It's letting that water go back into the ground instead of just running off into the streams. The bad thing about it is, where does that water go? I mean, on these pavers here, you've got polymeric sand or concrete in it, and the water's running off of it, okay? So if the water's running down into these cracks and all you got's, a little bit of gravel below it, then water the heck's just gonna come back up and run off. So on this paver here, you have to put a lot more base in them. And it has to be clean stone. When I say clean stone, it's like, this is clean stone. Anything that doesn't have the fines in there with it is clean stone. And what you do, and it varies, it just depends on the watershed that you're dealing with, but you may go down a foot. And you would start off with some larger rock, maybe railroad ballast. Has anybody ever seen the stone on the railroad tracks? It's about a 3-inch rock. You may start with that and then go up to a 57, which is about an inch and a half rock, which is number 5s and number 7s. All these rocks are one number now. 57s means you have 5s and 7s together. And then you go up again to maybe 67s. And then normally you'll finish out with 78s. And this is what you would bed this paver in. So what does that do? When that water goes down in these cracks and all these pavers, it'll go down into that basin of gravel and hopefully work its way out. Now, if you have a lot of water, and some people do, it varies on every property, you may even have to pipe some of this out. So it's a little tricky, and sometimes you have to get an engineer involved in it. Yes, sir. Not very. No. No. I'm sorry. I was supposed to do that. He's asking if crush and run is permeable, and it's not, because crush and run is on most people's driveways, at least as a base, but it's going to be 1.5 inch rock all the way down to the fines. That's what 1.5 inch minus means. It's going to have 1.5 inch all the way down to screenings is what that's called. And what that does is it just packs better. But once you pack it, now if you don't pack it, water's going to run into it and it would permeate some. It's going to get muddy, kind of mushy, but then it will eventually pack. But what you really want to do when you install it, you want to pack it. If you pack it, the water will run off. That's a good base material. And a lot of people will come back. You come back with this. I'm okay with this on a small driveway that's not very long, because it tends to get in your tires, gets stuck in your feet. And so in other words, you're driving a lot of it away or walking away with it. A 67, like a 3/4 inch stone, is perfect for a residential driveway. And if you're doing a commercial driveway, 57 is a little bit bigger. All right, so let's talk a little bit about stone. This here comes from the Appalachian Mountains. It actually comes from Marion, North Carolina. This particular color is chocolate gray. You'll notice that it's got some texture to it. Okay, this side's pretty flat, but it may be like this on both sides. It's not necessarily flat on one side and textured on the other. This is mainly, well, it's got a couple uses, but the main use is probably as a fascia. And some people are okay with that as a fascia because your stones are going flat, but there's a lot of people that like a ledge look. And you can see here, this is called Coronado stone. And it's man-made stone. It's actually formed concrete and then it's stained. And you can see how the pieces are smaller. That they call that a ledge look. Price-wise, it's probably a little cheaper to go with the faux stone if you like it. That one looks pretty real to me. We've got several that look real to me, but we've got several that just look, I think, horrible. But people buy it. But the other use of this, and I know everybody's seen it, is you ever been in somebody's front yard and that you see a little, like a dry stack wall? That's usually this kind of stone. I have some others I'm going to show you in a minute. But it's really not dry stacked. I mean, it can be. You just want to stack it. But what most people will do is put a little bit of concrete at the base. They'll start stacking their stone, say this is the front of it. They'll concrete the back half of it, put some concrete here, and then concrete the whole back of it. And that gives it stability where it's not going to fall, but it still looks like there's no cement at the front of it. So this one can be used as a fascia or a dry stack wall. This here is Tennessee flagstone. This could be made as a patio. Just flat enough where you can walk on it where you're not going to get hurt. And this comes from the same area I was talking about with that cobble. It's in Tennessee, this side of Knoxville, where most of that comes from. This here is similar to this. This comes from Marion, North Carolina. This comes from the Tennessee area. This is called Tennessee fieldstone. If you've ever been to the shows in Charlotte, the spring show or whatever, if you go into that area where it's dark and pretty and they got all those different areas, you'll see a lot of this. This is extremely popular, called Tennessee fieldstone. And you'll see a lot of dry stack walls made out of this, but you'll also see fascias done with it. So it could be used either way. This is going to be very similar to this Tennessee flagstone that I just showed you. This is going to be Pennsylvania flagstone. And this is an irregular shaped piece. It's not like bad, like no good, irregular. It's just irregular shaped. This would be good for a patio. Or we sell it different ways. You may want to make stepping stones out of this. You just wanted to have grass or natural stone, like some of this stuff here in between it, or grass, whatever you want to do. You could just get, and then there's larger pieces in this. You could do stepping stones with it. So it's got a lot of uses. This is travertine. Say it came from either Italy or Turkey. It's very brittle. It'll break pretty easily, and you'll occasionally see some holes in it even. But if it's good quality, there shouldn't be many holes in it. But the unique thing about it is if it's 150 degrees outside, it doesn't matter. You can walk on this barefoot all day long. It does not get hot. So it's used heavily around pools. Down in Florida, around pools and stuff, it's everywhere. We sell a lot of it up here to pool companies. This is an 8x8 piece. Most people want what's called a French pattern. And this is the smallest piece. It's a 4-piece, okay? So it's an 8x8, an 8x16, a 16x16, and a 16x24 mixed together. So there again, we're in that random looking pattern that people seem to like. I brought a piece of silver because it's on fire. The grays are still really doing good. This here is still Pennsylvania flagstone, but you notice it's been cut. This is part of what's called a pattern 2. There's actually 8 different pieces that come with this, and it's all on one pallet. We sell it in 100 square foot pallets and 200 square foot pallets. the price point on it is probably 10.25 on this. You can get it with some tans and browns in it, and it's a little bit cheaper. I think it's around $8.95 a square foot. And this travertine is going to probably be around $7.95 a square foot. And most of these here are going to be $3.95 a ton. These here, this one's a little bit cheaper. It's probably $2.50 a ton, which would be a basket. Yes, ma'am. She's asking if the travertine's really brittle, what kind of base do you use with it? That's a really good question. And I'll tell you how it's installed mostly is wrong. And it's installed the same way these pavers are, ABC, screenings, and then they put polysand in the cracks. But if you notice on the travertine, there's no spacers. These spacers are there for a reason. That's to keep some space between it so you can put polymeric sand in there. It kind of interlocks everything. This doesn't have spacers. So a lot of these companies out there, I won't mention any names, but there's a bunch of them that install this stuff. That's how they install it, but really it should be installed as an overlay. And when I say an overlay, you really need to put concrete down first, and you need to put this down, and you need to, you've seen people do tile and they've got those little spacers. You need to put spacers in here and then concrete this. Because what happens is, especially in the summer when it's very humid, these two travertine pieces are right butted up together. And if you don't have a little bit of space to get that polymeric sand in there, you're not going to fill this crack up. And if it's humid out, it's even worse. So what does that mean? Well, it means that water is going to get down into these cracks. And if you're installing it the wrong way, it's going to start going down into that base. Then it's going to start going wherever water's go, where the least resistance, that's the way the water's going. And over time, it starts washing it out and it starts settling. And then at that point, all you can do is do a repair. You just have to go in there and pull up what's settled and fix it and do the best you can with it. And you're probably going to come back in a couple of years to do it again. But it's a little bit sad, but it's just not installed correctly in most applications. It needs to be done as an overlay. And this one too. This is 1 inch thick. And there's some bigger pieces. If you don't have this on a good base, it's going to crack. When you get over like a 12 inch by 12 inch, it's called an aspect ratio. And if you get a lot of weight on it, it'll just break.
Jeff, when you're going to talk about, so all of these are materials that would be in a patio. Is it realistic that a homeowner could do their own patio? Is it because with the leveling and the drainage and can they do it? I know I've asked you 100 times when I was trying to get something home, always giving me good advice about what I need to look for, and you've helped me understand when it was probably a bigger project than I could do.
Mm-hmm.
But so are some of these, I mean, can the homeowner reasonably do some of these patio projects or these paper projects?
Okay. Well, Nancy's asking if a homeowner can do this. And the answer is, if Nancy set her mind to it, yes, she can. I promise you she can. I know her. But a lot of people do, honestly. But I'm going to tell you, it's hardscaping, okay? Hardscaping is hard material, but you know what else? It's just freaking hard to do. The material, you got to dig out the dirt. Who likes to dig? I don't. You got to dig that out. And then you got to put gravel down. That's heavy. It's very heavy. A yard of ABC's 1.5 tons, 3,000 pounds. You got to put that in. Then you got to have a plate tamp, and you got to pack that. Then you got to put a little bit of screenings, and then you got to put the pavers on top. I have a tremendous amount of homeowners that do this, but they can't go in like a contractor and 3 days are gone. It's finished. The homeowner's happy. They need to do this like a weekend warrior project. We're going to dig it out this weekend. We're going to cover it with the tarp in case it rains. And next weekend, if if our back can take it, we're going to do some more. And but yes, a lot of homeowners do this work. It's hard work. I'm not going to lie to you. And this stuff's not cheap, but you can save a tremendous amount of money in labor costs if you do it yourself. Plus, you get the satisfaction of doing your own project, doing it your way. So it's got its advantages and disadvantages. But people like Nancy can do this. Yes. So I brought some decorative stone here just to kind of give you an idea of some that are available. You know, you could take this flagstone here if you wanted to, and this has become real popular in the last couple of years, and where people, and you've seen it, where there's some spacing between, they just kind of do them like this, and they put gravel between them. And that looks very nice. The only problem I really see with that is you really need to use the smallest gravel you can in there, because I promise you they're gonna come out of that space and get on top of this. There's really no way to prevent that. That's really the only drawback to that, but it really does look nice. And if you're not really constantly walking on it, I mean, it's going to look nice. You can do it that way. There is products that you can spray on stone. They hold it in place, but you have to redo that yearly. Yes, sir.
But in your experience, what is the average width of a path?
Okay. Okay, he's asking what is the average width of a path, and that's also a good question. If it's not a heavily traveled path, you're just trying to get from point A to point B. Say you have a greenhouse in your backyard, you have a garden area, you have a fire pit, 3 foot's fine. I mean, that gives you wide, and you could do stepping stones and plant grass around it, or gravel. 3 foot's fine. Now, if you're the front of your house and it's more formal, and you would probably want to go 4 foot. 4 foot is really 4 foot or 3 foot is what most people do. I mean, there's always exceptions to that rules, and some people will drag them out a little bit at the end to kind of make them look a little nicer.
If your mother's coming to live with you, then redo the whole thing.
So that's 4 foot, just a little bit on the side.
Yep, and they're more than likely they're going to be coming in the front or the back, and you would probably have a 4 foot there. The 3 foot really is more of a, what would I call it, a maintenance trail, or I don't know. It's just a smaller area to get from point A to point B where you're not getting muddy, you're not tearing grass up. Hopefully you can get it down enough where it's level, where you can just cut right over it with the lawnmower. You're not doing a bunch of weed eating and stuff, which can be aggravating. So we got these two Alabama browns. If you want something in the brown or tan family, these are good choices. We sell this in bulk and dump trucks. We also, you've seen the big bags on the tractor trailers. We can put anything you want in those bags. It don't matter what it is. And that's about a cubic yard. So we can bring this stuff out that way. And sometimes it makes sense to get the bag. You don't want to have to clean it off your driveway, the grass area. Maybe the dump truck can't get, but in your driveway or on the street. Let's say you need it in the backyard. You don't want to have to shovel that at the road or in your driveway, have to carry it all the way around behind the house. You're going to be wore out before you even get started with the project. So you got to think about all that stuff when you're ordering this material. But it is definitely not as big of a mess to clean up if it's in the bags, but it does cost you a little bit more. But at 4 bags or less, it really doesn't. But when you hit more than 4 bags and you're going to be on a flatbed with these, then it starts to cost you more than it would to bring it on a dump truck. If that makes sense to you.
We have a question from remote. What's the best place for a fire pit?
I would tell you to probably use ABC. That's going to be the go-to for a base. Now, if this person calling this in is really wanting a natural look, then, and Nancy, you're familiar with this because you're a horse person. Anybody that's a question would know, pit gravel does basically the same thing as ABC, but it's brown. It kind of blends in. It looks like dirt. Have you ever been to any of these schools or where there's trails going down through the woods, and it's like it looks like dirt, but it's actually real fine gravel? That's pit gravel. And what that is, it's decomposed granite. It used to be gray rock, but it's been there so long, it's decomposing, but it's still gravel. Builders used to use it big time 20, 25 years ago. I mean, we'd have a pile as high as a telephone pole easily. And if it got lower than that, we get nervous. So we sold the hound out of it. But most people now are using in these porches when they're building houses where they're, up off the ground. The inspectors are making them use clean stone now because you don't have to compact that clean stone. Anything like ABC, pit gravel, you have to put 4 inches in, compact it, 4 inches in, compact it, 4 inches in, compact it, and hope you compacted it good enough where the porch is not going to settle. You put 57s or 67s in there, you don't even have to touch it, and it's not going to settle. It's like 97 or 98% compacted when it's put in place. So that's why pit gravel kind of went to the wayside. But a lot of equestrian people around the barn still use it because it gets muddy around the barn because the hoofs are sharp and the horses are heavy. You just always have a lot of mud, and the pit gravel looks natural. So my question would be, or my answer would be, pit gravel probably if they didn't want to kind of take away from the look of the fire pit because you're going to have it kind of going out and around a little bit.
Which paver would be best underneath a freestanding fire pit?
You could use anything. The thing is on a fire pit, the few things you got to keep in mind is drainage. And most people really don't do anything, but you could put some type of metal piping to drain if you had some grade. You could put some gravel in there for it to help to drain it. What I tell people on a patio, and they say, Jeff, we've got to know what the dimension of this fire pit is. We want it in the center of our patio. We want to have that cut out. No, don't. That's dumb. What you need to do is put your whole patio down first. Just put it down. Just don't do the poly sand yet. That's the last step. And what you do is you just go ahead and put your fire pit right where you want it, on top of the pavers. And then just pull out whatever pavers you can get out. You won't get them all out because some are underneath the fire pit. Take out what you can, and then put some type of decorative stone, some lava rock, whatever you want in there. It can drain. You haven't had to cut all the way around. And I'm telling you that the best cut is still a cut. Okay. If you don't cut nothing, it's perfect. It looks great. And it's a lot easier. So that's how you deal with that. So we do sell mulch. We sell all of them. I brought the brown dye because that's been the best seller for probably 2 or 3 years, but we sell pine mulch, mini nuggets, large nuggets, cypress, cedar, which is, cedar. Cypress is also called playground cushion. It's heavily used in North Carolina in the daycares. It's required, matter of fact, 8 inches of it. And it's a combination of mulch and chips. They call it playground cushion, but a lot of people just use it in their beds too. It's kind of a tan color. It's really not that attractive, but it really is awesome for playgrounds because it's a light color where if there's a snake in there, spiders, you might see it. It doesn't get your clothes as dirty. So it's good for playgrounds. Okay, so we're not going to talk much about the softscape stuff because we're here to talk about hardscapes. Let's talk about some walls. This here is called a Windsor wall. It's a retail product that you can probably buy it at Lowe's or Home Depot. We really don't keep much retail stuff, but this one seems to sell pretty good. The contractors buy it, the homeowners buy it. You would see this in a front yard where maybe they're going to put a little bit of mulch in, maybe a little bit of topsoil. It is a retaining wall block, but it really, honestly, it's not made to retain much. This is the only color it comes in. It's Carolina blend, and you can put a cap on it if you want, but you don't have to. The wall is angled, so you can go straight with it, or you can do curves with it. So it's pretty flexible in how you use it. We sell quite a bit of that. I'll stop here and talk about this adhesive. This stuff here is just unbelievable. This is you put it in a caulk tube, and it's retaining wall adhesive. It's a polyurethane adhesive. If you build a fire pit and you want to glue it together, you don't have to cement it together. Dave probably would want to, but the landscapers don't want to do masonry work. This stuff works great. You put it in a caulk gun and it doesn't take much. This concrete will break before this does. And I'm telling you, I've seen it many times. And if you build a fire pit, it'll withstand heat over 400 degrees. And if this is wet, you're doing it on a rainy day, no problem, use it. It'll stick. It really works good. The only thing bad about it, it's got a good shelf life too, but the only bad thing is if it's below freezing, you can't use it. But most guys aren't going to be out probably working if it's that cold anyway. That really don't matter. Okay, this here is called rumbled wall. And it's kind of has an old world look. It's kind of flat, but it looks like it's been thrown around a little bit, beaten up a little bit. It's 4 inches by 8 inches by 16 inches. And if you think about that for a minute, you got 4 here, then you got double that 8, okay? Then you got double that 16. What does that mean? It means it's multi-dimensional. So if you don't want to be boring and you just stack them up like this, you could actually turn one up like this. You could turn one like this. You could do 2 like this. You can do whatever you want with it. This one block can look like it's 5 or 6 different kind of pieces because you can turn it anyway. Because if you understand 4, 8, 16, it's multi-dimensional, which means you can turn it and it still works out. The math works. This is excellent material used for like an outdoor kitchen. Because a lot of these walls, and we're going to talk about these in a minute, the backside doesn't look good. You can build a kitchen out of these, but there's just a lot more involved with it where you cover up these areas. This one here, it looks the same on all sides. So it's just very, very easy to build a rectangle, a square, a horseshoe, whatever kind of shape. Very, very easy. I mean, a homeowner could easily do this. If you wanted to just fancy up your grill, you could just do like a little horseshoe with these, and it looks like a custom grill job, and something you could do on a morning, on a weekend. You could build walls with this. There's just a lot of uses for this. This is a really, really good product. We sell a lot of it. This color is called Earth Blend. It's around $5.30. These, I don't think I told you the price, are $2.30. Very reasonably priced. This one here being that size, it's about a half a square foot, so it's really not that hard to calculate. Whatever your square footage is, let's say, for example, it was 10 foot long and 2 foot high, that's 20 square feet. You need 40 of these because this is a half a square foot. So a lot of this stuff is set up where it's pretty easy to calculate. 30 pounds. This one's 85. Imagine picking these up all day long. All right, this stone here, and there again, I just didn't have enough room in my truck, but you'll notice it's got a bullet crunch face on it on both sides, and you'll notice that it's angular. This is called a freestanding wall. Some people call it it's a sitting wall, but they call it they got a name. I'm trying to think what they call it. There's another name for it, but it's a sitting wall. And you generally go about 18 inches high, and with the cap, it's about 21 inches high. That is a comfortable height for an average size person. For kids, regular adults. Now, if you're extremely tall, you're not going to have any guests, you could go higher if you wanted to. You're able to do that with this block. But around 21 inches, that'd be 3 courses and a cap. It includes cap, yes, sir. He asked if that would include the cap at 21 inches, and it does. And on this one, you just use this glue. I mean, you put ABC as a base. You want to put a little bit underground just so it doesn't move, and build it up. It's really not that hard, but it's not something you want to, if you don't do it for a living, if you got an office job, you want to take your time. You don't want to hurt yourself because stuff's heavy. But you can do this. It can be done. And a lot of people like these around fire pits. They like it on patios. It's permanent. You might want to bring some chairs out too, move them wherever you want, but this is something that's permanent where if you're just coming out for a few minutes, drink a cup of coffee or something, it's there. You know, if it gets rained on, it doesn't matter. You just use it. Knee wall is the word I was looking for. A knee wall or a sitting wall. And that's what this is for. But it's a 3-piece is the way it comes. This is the smallest piece. It's a 6-inch. Then there's a 12-inch, and then there's an 18-inch. So the 18-inch, and then you put the 6 and the 12-inch together, they're basically would be the same. Okay. And like I say, you can do straight with this. If you want to do straight, because it's angled, how you do it straight, when it looks the same on both sides, you flip the block each time. And it stays straight. So you can do straight or curve with this wall. So it's very flexible what you can do with it. This here is what you call a square foot block. This is what most retaining walls of any size are going to be. I just did a quote that I turned in yesterday. The wall is going to be 32 feet tall. It's going to be 24 truckloads. And it's going to a prison up in Lincolnton, I think is where it's going. But these are square foot blocks. There again, they're very easy to calculate. They're 18 inches long. They're 8 inches tall. That's, if you do the math, that's about 0.92 of a square foot. So it's very cool. I just calculated as a square foot. This particular block is called an 18-inch Regal Pro. It's made by Keystone. And it prices out at about $7.99 a piece. So again, to give you an example, if you had a 10-foot wall, 2 foot high, just make it simple. That's 20 square feet. How many blocks do you need? 20, because it's a square foot. It's pretty easy to calculate. It's angled. And so if you put the next one to it, you just run it straight. And there's going to be gravel inside this wall, clean stone, and there's going to be gravel in between the cracks. And the reason that is in most cases, when you build a retaining wall, you're basically building a dam in a lot of cases, if you think about it. So what you have to do is put gravel in here where that water can escape somehow, because if that hydro pressure has nowhere to go, it will blow these walls out. You've probably seen them where they just blow out. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to do it. Hydro pressure is very strong. But you want a 4-inch pipe behind it with holes in it, clean stone in here and behind the wall at least a foot. That way any water that comes toward this wall from behind will find its way into that gravel, into that pipe, and you drain it off the lower end of wherever your grade lower is where you'd take that water to. You have to do that. You really don't have a choice. You're asking for problems if you don't do it. Residentially, you can go up to 4 foot without having to have a structural engineer involved. But over that, you're supposed to get one. Now, I tell every person that comes through the door that, and some do it and some don't. I can tell you that, if you're in a neighborhood and you don't like your neighbor or they're a jealous neighbor, I'd get an engineer if you go higher, because you're probably going to get caught. And the engineer doesn't mind telling you, sir, we'll just have you take this completely down and start over. Please. Commercial walls, you can go 5 foot. But just think about it. Let's say you did a residential wall, you had a guy do it, and he went 7 or 8 feet high, and there were some kids playing at the front, climbing on it, and it fell over on them, and it killed them. That landscaper that installed this, everything that he has worked for in his life is gone. Gone. Because the liability is just going to be terrible. So it's really not worth it, is what I'm saying. It costs some money to get it, but you just have to pass that along to the customer. Do it right, and you don't have to go back. This stuff's very expensive. It needs to be installed correctly. If not, then you're going to have to go back and do it again. And what a lot of these guys do, especially on the pavers, is you need 4 inches of ABC and an inch of screenings. Well, you're off at work and you're paying them good money. Well, they put an inch down or 2 inches down and put your pavers down. They've saved all that money. It still looks the same to you when you get home, but it's going to fail, unless that ground's really, really hard. It's just not going to make it. And then those kind of people like that, you call them in 6 months. Do they answer? Probably not. So any of you people that are interested in this stuff, I've got gobs and gobs of people. I just need to know where you live, what kind of scope of work that you need. I've got certain people that do different stuff. I don't get paid for any of that. These are just my customers. I try and help. They buy the material from me. That's all there is to that. But if you want to attempt to do this yourself, you can do that. And I've got some people that if you think you can do it and you get into it a little ways and you decide you can't, you hurt yourself or whatever the case may be, I've got people that can come and help you, finish it up. So don't worry about that. Okay, let's talk about a little something that the club here might find of interest. If you want something functional, you don't really care how it looks, and I'm talking about raised beds. These block right here, $2.49 a piece. Don't concrete it in. Don't do anything. Maybe dig you a little bit of a ditch where you bury in maybe an inch of it, and just line them up. And really the cool thing about it is, go ahead and fill these up with dirt. You could put onions in here. You could put basil. Yep, basil. What's the flower that keeps the critters away? The marigolds. Put those in there. There's a lot of stuff you can put in here. So this to me is so cool. It's not the most attractive block, but it's very, very functional. And if you don't concrete, you can move it. And one thing that I saw I thought was really cool was a shape like this. And then like this. In other words, there's a little aisleway right here. Okay. That way you can make this area a little bigger because you got a trail to come into that area where you can work your plants. And then of course you can work it all the way around the outside. That was a really neat design that I saw, but you can make any shape you want. I have quite a few beds that are fairly narrow and they're up off the ground, and you can work it from both sides. I like that way a lot because I feel like you can control your soil a little bit better. It's a little bit closer to you as you get older. It's a little easier to get to. You can make it as high as you want. Just a good way. You may have to, one drawback, and it's not a big one really, is you may have to water it a little bit more than you would if it was in the ground. And that goes in basket planting too. You generally have to water that more. But the soil is just pretty bad here, honestly. And if you can control that a little bit better, I think that's a big help. I really do. Anybody have any questions?
Somebody online asked about the travertine. Is it slippery, especially around a pool?
Anything like this can be slick, and just to answer your question, it could be. But most people that use it and are used to it, they're careful. If that person is concerned with that, what you can do is there's a product, we sell it, but we'd have to seal this. So all this stuff can be sealed, but just keep in mind, it's just like brick. If you paint it, what are you going to have to do 10 years from now? Paint it again. If you seal something, you're going to have to seal it again. But there is a product that you can put in a gallon of sealer, and it's clear. You don't see it, but it's texture. And you seal the pavers, and it puts texture on this material. It's a little bit coarser than that. But I mean, if it was sandy, that would work too. But it's just a little bit bigger than that, and I'm not real sure how I would tell you what size it is. But they're probably like the end of that, maybe a little bit smaller than that even. But nothing that would be uncomfortable to walk on. But if you had an issue with that, say you had some elderly people or handicapped people or kids running maybe all the time, that would be the answer to that question. That's what you do.
Use that XP stuff on the cinder block and concrete block if you stack them and hold them in place.
You can.
You don't need to run some rebar down through there.
Well, if you're gonna, if you're doing an outdoor kitchen, or if you were doing a wall, of course you'd have to. You wouldn't want to use this. You'd want to do it in masonry, which would be concrete footer rebar sticking out of the ground. Then you'd put the block in, and most times you'll fill the block with Saccrete. That's the right way to do it. But that is so much more expensive than doing it like this way. I mean, and it's still done that way, but that's why this stuff here has gotten so popular, is because it's just a lot cheaper and it looks better and just works out good for a lot of people. Yes, sir.
Yes, how much is
Okay, he's asking how much this block is, and it is sold 3-piece, okay? That's the only way it comes. It's called freestanding wall. A pallet of this is $400, and it does about 24 square feet. That would equivalent to about a 16-foot sitting wall, is what one pallet would do. Actually, let me take that back, because they palletize this different now. It was 16 feet, now it's 20 feet, because they added a layer to it this year. So it'll do a 20-foot sitting wall, 21 inches.
that? Ideas are just rolling out of all of us. That's what it is. Can you keep that in stock?
Yeah, everything you see here, we keep in stock. The owner of my company, Eric, he is a firm believer in, if you don't have it, you can't sell it. We've got more material in our yard than anybody in Charlotte. And Site One's a national company. Ewing Irrigation is a national company. We have way more material than they would ever have. I'll tell you a funny story. Back during the pandemic, we had so much material in our yard that we were fine for a long time. But a lot of these people that I don't even call distributors, and I didn't really like them, kind of made me mad. They'd sell some of the stuff, and they go to the plant and get it and then deliver it. Well, guess what? When the pandemic came, they didn't have no material. And guess what rolled into our yard daily? Site One, Ewing, and here's the funniest one. Pavestone, the manufacturer. They ran out of stuff and they came to our yard and get stuff. So we loved that. We got pictures of that. We had some fun with that. When the manufacturer comes to your yard to get stuff to sell, that's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Yes, no. No, that would be separate. And there again, this stuff is set up where it's very easy to figure out. If you had a straight wall, they're 18 inches long, you divide it by 1.5. If it's a straight line, that's how many caps you need. Now, if it curves, you kind of have to, I'm just not that smart. I'm sure an engineer could do it, but I just add a couple caps based on what they tell me the curve is. And that gives them some extra for cuts, because they'll have to cut a few of them to make it work. The block, you should never really have to cut much, but caps you'll always have to cut. So if you're going to do one of these projects, you need to plan on renting a concrete saw, 14-inch concrete saw. And you can rent one at any rental store. It's no big deal. And plate tamps as well. You'll do pavers, you're going to need a plate tamp.
This strip wall, would they be able to figure out how many end caps you need or an overlap on
Some people can figure that out. I found, being in the industry so long, that there's so many of my customers, and I love them dearly, but I have to calculate this stuff for them, and they're in this business. So it's really pretty sad. But that's one thing that I would say about Carolina Brick. It's mom and pop. I'm not family, but a lot of their family does work there, and that's what I do all day long. If you come in to our store, and a lot of people just are scared to come in because they don't really know what they want, but you don't need to be scared to come into our place, because you're all welcome there. And if you need me to give you a recommendation, you tell me what you're trying to do, I'll figure out what wall will work good for you. I will show you oh yeah, I'm there every day. I work for Eric McComb from 7 to 5. I'm there. But I can help you choose stuff. And it's not all what I think. It's based on all the customers that I deal with. I just kind of know what people like. And you may not. There's people that won't like it, but it's a good place to start. You say, well, Jeff, yeah, I like that style, but I'm not crazy about the color. Well, we'll show you some other colors, and we'll send samples home with you free of charge. So you can take it to your home, see if you like it, see if it's going to work, and If you bring it back, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. And I'll calculate the job for you. That's all I do. I can calculate everything you need on it, and it'll be close. It won't be exact. One thing that's really important though is if you have grade. And when I say grade, if you have like stand out the back side of your house and it kind of maybe drops off a little bit, what you can do is take just some mason line, which is some strong twine, and put it at the grade at the base. Pull it out, put your line level. It's a little level that you stick on that line. And when you get the bubble where it's level, then run a tape measure to the ground. And that'll tell you how much grade you have. It may say 1 foot, may say 2 foot. Let's hope it doesn't say too much, because the more grade you got, the more money it's going to cost you, because you're going to have to put more block, more gravel. But that's good information to bring me. If you want me to help you calculate a job, is what that grade is. And when you come in, if you haven't done that, I can explain that to you again. It's very simple to do. Line level might cost a couple bucks. Most people have string. Everybody's got a tape measure. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is, say you've just got an area that does just drop off, and maybe pretty drastically, and you cut it and it's just a pain. You know, it's just an area that you pay for and it's yours, but you really don't use it for anything. You know, putting a wall in kind of down the grade a little ways and then bring that up to grade and filling that in, you could make an area that was really unusable. You can make it level where you could actually maybe put a patio there if you wanted to. You could do whatever you want with it, but you know, this retaining walls are good for unusable areas. And I mean, you could build raised beds out of this because it's textured on both sides. If you wanted a little bit fancier, you know, you kind of care how it looks. If you want something more functional, this is a cheap, good way to do it. If you want something that looks a little better, go this route. They both are easy to install. Somebody's got to have a question. Stuff's complicated. I know you do. I talked to you 30 minutes before I got up here. You got, you can ask me questions all night. I feel pretty confident. And I probably can answer them. If not, I'll make you believe that I know what I'm talking about.
Jeff, I have been doing this for a lot of years together, and I've done so many projects between a horse arena or gardening things, and you know, I have these questions. You know, Jeff he'll ask me the question. He'll say, you know, does it slope? Is it this? Is it that? And what are your dimensions? You know, what are your approximate dimensions? He'll tell me. I'll say, I just need a little bit, and he'll say, not for that. You need, you know, 4 inches, or so you get that kind of information, and he calculates it. So you know, he'll give me an estimate. I'll say, well, that project's got to wait 2 years, but you get that information quickly with someone like Jeff who knows his stuff, and it's a phone call, and it's you know, it's the information you need, and then the product's there when you're ready.
Yeah, and you know, I mentioned too that, you know, we have a lot of product on yard where our logistics is extremely strong too. I mean, we have a lot of trucks. We've got full-size tractor trailers. We have straight trucks where we got to get in the tight areas. We have dump trucks, and we have more trucks than anybody probably in North and South Carolina. Just come look. I mean, it's really amazing what we do. We normally can turn anything around in 2 days on a flatbed, and dump trucking is normally the same day. We can get it out quick, and most people want it yesterday. So we try to accommodate that as best we can.
With a question, do you have stepping stones for pathways?
We do, and I didn't bring some of those, but we do have some precast stepping stones that Teco Block made. Are, in my opinion, are a little bit pricey. They're probably going to be in the $30 to $40 range a piece. So to me, that's a little bit expensive. It's by Teco Block. It's a very, very good, reputable company, and they actually look natural. But you can buy just natural stone. I've got bigger pieces that you can pick through if you want, and do it out of the stepping stones natural. But we do have quite a bit. We've got one that's called Borealis, and it looks like a stump. And it's about this big around. It looks just like a stump. They say that when they make these molds, they actually take the wood and make it into molds. They really do look realistic. And another good thing about Teco block is if you get one, you can say the whole pallet's the same. Well, it's not. They might have 3 or 4 different patterns within that pallet. So it really does look pretty natural to be precast, which is, you know, man-made. But, you know, pathways are very, very popular, especially if you just got a little area you need to get to every now and then, where you're not just tromping through the wet grass or maybe mud. You know, it's good. Another good option. Yes, ma'am.
Repeat.
Does precast stepping stones last as long as natural stone? I don't know that I feel comfortable giving you the answer to that question. I feel like they probably would, but here's the thing. Natural stone is natural stone. It's been there for a long time. Precast is made out of concrete and it's got a coating on it and it's painted. Okay. If you happen to chip on the precast, it comes off and you see concrete below it. Nah, not gonna work. It's gonna look like crap. This here is just a lot more durable. So precast will last a long time. You probably wouldn't have to worry about it, but there's things that could happen that would make it not look as good as new. Yeah, that is a problem. You got to be you got to be delicate with them.
Wait, when you talk about using different blocks for borders, is there a technique to, because you still have to get your ground level for your border not to be doing this.
Mhm.
Is there a technique that is, I'm not very good at it. Is there a good technique to get that level?
You can take a string. That's the way these guys will install these pavers. Of course, they've got cameras and stuff now they use, but the old-fashioned way, which is still widely used, is you'll just put a string on top of one paver to the next paver, and that gives you a level space. And you can do the same thing with an edger. Put one here, one there, get it level, and then you want to dig it in a little bit, you know, at least maybe an inch in the ground, so it's kind of held in place. But that's how you would know your grade's right. You'd have a straight line as well with just a masonry twine.
So you're digging to get your block to that string.
Correct. And that's the way brick and block are installed. They run lines to keep them straight. You can do the same thing on the ground with pavers and edgers.
On your, on your slate. What's the additional, delta on pricing, just, you know, from flat to 30 degrees?
Well,
Yeah.
Well, you know, everyone's different, but what I can tell you is if you have grade, it's going to cost you more. And what's going to cost you more is where you just install pavers on your gravel base. You're going to have to put some kind of a wall there. It may be one course and maybe 2. It just depends on the height that you need to get up to get you almost level. You know, you always want a little bit of slope away from the house. And then, of course, you got to fill that area in, whereas if it's level, you did 4 inches of ABC. If you have one block down, let's say you're using this one, a 6 inch, they make this in a retaining too, then you know you got to have 2 more inches of ABC. So you're going to have that ABC, and if it's 2 inches, you really got to add 30% to that for compaction on ABC. So it's going to smash down some. So if it's 2 yards, you'd add 30%. That's what you need to get that 2 inches. That's if you're doing a permeable paver. You just need an area to hold that water in place in the permeable until it can get out, if that's what you're asking me. Yeah.
dig behind the wall, put gravel in it so that the water runs down?
That's a good question. He's asking if you need to have any drainage behind the wall, and absolutely you have to have it. If you don't, your wall's going to fail at some point. And this storm we just had in the mountains, that you wouldn't have a wall. Because it creates a dam. I mean, it's just no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to put like a 4-inch pipe behind it, and then you need clean stone about a foot behind is what they call for, all the way up the wall and inside the wall. So if some of the water misses that pipe and that gravel behind, if it gets into here, it can still go down and maybe find its way out. In other words, you're giving it the best chance it can for the water to escape. So if it doesn't, the hydro pressure is going to blow the wall out. Now, if you're just doing a sitting wall that's 21 inches tall, you don't have to do that stuff. But when you're building a retaining wall and you're retaining material, you have to do it. Do you have gutters
On my house.
going, draining away from your home with piping and all that? Yeah.
That first in part, that's one. Take the side off. Cut out that sort.
Yeah.
The small.
Right. Yeah.
And make that wider. I'm gonna make this up because say it's wide as a state, that's gonna be like something. Pea gravel probably. If we've got our pavers and stuff already, sitting in a corner somewhere that we're gonna put, that would go from the driveway up.
Mhm.
So all that will come up to that. And that's how we're gonna do it, but it's gonna be straight.
Yeah. But do you have like one end is lower than the other where you could drain the water out of the one of the sides?
Degradation of the pipe as you move towards the middle of the house.
Okay.
The house is on a significant slope this way.
Yeah.
But up to the front, it's like,
Yeah.
and then there's downward sloping that goes as you go towards the farm of the house. So there's a natural path. The water wants to go that way.
Now, in that situation, let's say it was in the middle of the wall. He's saying his drainage naturally goes somewhere in the middle of the wall. You can drill a hole in these walls, and there's actually some pieces you can put in between them that's like this wide. They're plastic and they go all the way down, but it's got a big 4-inch pipe back here. And you can put that in there and it'll drain out there to get to that area. So you don't necessarily have to drain it off one end or the other end. If you needed to come out in the front, and if it's a huge wall, you may have several of those, but you can come directly out of the front of the wall if you need to. It doesn't really look as good. So if you can avoid that, you're better off going out one of the ends. And if you don't have a lot of grade, you could do what's called a pop-up emitter. It's where the pipe's on the ground and it just comes up like this, and there's a little plastic cap and it pops up when there's water and it just drains like that. So if you don't have grade, that's how you fix that.
Pea gravel or whatever, small stone that we choose right up to the front of that, and I'm assuming that's gonna be an inch or two around.
Yeah, he's asking if he can put some gravel in the front. You can put anything you want in front of it. There's really not, water-wise, it shouldn't come out the front. But if you want to put decorative stone, mulch, dirt, patio, anything you want, you can. Anything you want to do there. And actually, you wouldn't have to put any edging there because you have that wall to start your paver. So you wouldn't have to put any extra edging or saccharine there to hold that into the wall. Yes, sir.
You're doing a sitting wall, what kind of base?
I would tell you to do the same thing. He's asking on the sitting wall about the base, and it's going to be pretty similar to this. I tell people to do a ditch about 2 foot wide and about 6 inches of gravel. So this block is 9 inches wide. Why would you go 2 foot wide? Well, anytime you do a footer, you always want that footprint to be bigger than whatever's going on top of it. It just gives it more support. Plus, if you're putting your wall in and you're looking at it and saying, it needs to go this way a little bit. If you got it all tightened up, you have no adjustment, is what I'm saying. And that gives you a little bit of wiggle room if you need to angle it or move it. And it gives it plenty of base to support it. Now, if you're doing something, higher than the legal limit, you got an engineer, the engineer is going to tell you what has to be done. It may be more gravel, maybe more gravel this way. There's also a fabric called geogrid that you can put in between layers of block, and it goes back into your gravel and your dirt, and that supports the wall, keeps it from falling. It's a very strong material. If anybody's familiar with a railroad tie wall, you remember what they call it a dead man? That's where you turn one of the railroad ties backwards and tied it into the bank to give the wall support. That's what that geogrid does. And there again, at 4 feet, you really don't have to use that. I've got some customers, they sleep better at night with one layer on there. If it goes way up, the engineer's going to tell you. You may have several, and he may tell you how far to go back. That wall I was just talking about, this 32-foot high, they're going to have to go back almost 30 feet with geogrid. That's the fabric that's going to hold this wall up. So they're going to have to grade all that back there out. It's going to be a big wall. But that's what would hold that up. But this one here, if you're just going 4 foot, the same thing as this, I'd do a 2 foot wide, use ABC, go about 6 inches deep. And then back here, you need to use clean stone where the water can drain through it and inside. Somebody's got to stump me on a question. Come on.
Any more questions? Now's your chance. No?
Well, I hope I've explained this stuff good. Like I say, I'm not a public speaker. I've never liked doing it, but I do have a lot of knowledge on this stuff, and I'm glad I was able to come, and I hope it'll help you make some decisions on some of your future
You
projects.
did a great job, and thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you.